Hello and welcome everybody. My name is David Bassens. I'm an associate professor of economic geography at Vrije Universiteit Brussels. And I'm a treasurer of the Global Network on Financial Geography. On behalf of the Regional Studies Association and my co-organizers Karen Lai, Darius Wojcik and Duncan Lindo, I want to welcome you to the fourth FinGeo Virtual Seminar already. Today's talk will be given by Vincent Guermond, who is based at Royal Holloway, UK. And the theme is Remittances and Financial Inclusion, Contested Geographies of Marketisation in Senegal and Ghana. Now, all too often, I think accounts of financialization come with a bit of a spectre of structural inevitability, as financialization is considered to have far-reaching global effects. But as we'll learn, I guess, today, and as Vincent has carefully documented through his fieldwork in Senegal and Ghana, this process of financial inclusion is actually all but straightforward or even teleological. So I think Vincent will tell us all about that. And I'm also very excited again that we can offer this stage to an early career researcher. And in this case, Vincent is also one of our prize winners of the FinGeo Doctoral Dissertation Prize of the most recent round. So again, congratulations on that, Vincent. Now, before I hand the floor to Vincent, just two housekeeping notes. So the seminar is being recorded, so please mute yourself throughout. If you want to leave on your camera, that's possible. If you want to save some bandwidth, switch it off. Then also note that there will be ample time for questions afterwards. We have about 30 minutes of talk by Vincent. But you can already start posing some questions in the chat, and I'll use them afterwards to moderate the Q&A. Or you can also put in a question after the talk. That is also very much possible. So without further ado, Vincent, I'll give the floor to you.
Great. Thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, that's perfect. We can see them.
Cool. All right. So hi, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to thank everyone at FinGeo for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. And also thank you very much for running this dissertation prize every year. I think it's great that such opportunities exist for early career researchers, as you say, David. So yeah, thank you very much. So in August 2019, the Financial Times dedicated a 7-part series to global remittances, noting that remittances had surpassed foreign direct investment as the largest flow of capital to developing and emerging economies. Remittances underpin the livelihood strategies of over 1 billion people. So in 2019, an estimated 200 million migrant workers sent to their 800 million family members in the global south, $554 billion US. And this cross-border data only paint a partial picture, failing to account for domestic remittances. But while remittances are usually depicted as an essential source of funds for many of the planet's poorest, international financial and development organizations argue that their development impacts could be increased if some of that money was channeled into more, and I quote, productive investment. One key approach to bringing this about is to integrate remittances into the so-called formal financial system via banks, microfinance institutions, mobile money accounts. And this would allow them not only to build up savings, but also access credit and insurance products. What this means is that productive uses of remittances have become synonymous with the circulation and uses of remittances within global financial circuits. And as Pedro de Vasconcelos, so he's a senior technical specialist at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, so as he states in one of the pieces of the Financial Times series, the rationale is simple. How can we make these remittances count more? So at the core of what I call the remittance financial inclusion nexus are attempts to change financial infrastructure and instruments with which remittances are sent, received, saved, borrowed, loaned, and invested. So the different initiatives of the global remittance agenda that are of interest to me range from the promotion of formal channels of transfer to the promotion of financial services linked to remittances, but also to what's called remittance securitization. And they constitute what a number of critical remittance scholars have called the financialization of remittances. So previous analysis of this financialization of remittances, they've called into question this market-based approach to the project and its prioritizing of the political and financial concerns of a broad coalition of national and global actors over the needs of migrant men and women and the people they send remittances to. And these analyses, they've proved essential in understanding this disciplinary role of the agenda and exploring the potential impacts of the expansion of finance on the back of remittances. But my thesis is motivated by a gap in remittance research, namely that we still don't fully understand how the financial incorporation of remittance flows and remittance households unfolds in practice. So more precisely, what I argue is that not much critical attention has been given to the intricate and the grounded operations that are required for such projects to materialize. And what it does is that it tends to leave the operations of finance, the concrete formation of markets, of remittance markets, black boxed, as Stefan Uma would say. And in addition to this, what I also argue is that we still don't fully understand how such market-making processes are experienced, accepted, or contested by remittance recipients. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is to try to answer these two following questions. So how do remittance markets come into being concretely in Senegal and Ghana? So here I'm interested in all the elements that are put together and contribute to the financial incorporation of remittances and remittance recipients. And my second question is, how do remittance recipients respond to processes of financial subject formation and incorporation? So here I look at whether and how the behaviors and practices of recipients can be nudged by remittance-led development programs and initiatives. So what I do is that I'll spend a couple of minutes on my methodology. I'll then give a brief overview of the remittance landscapes in both Senegal and Ghana. And then I will delve deeper into my two key arguments. And I'll finish with several contributions I think, or I hope, my research makes. So I spent 5 months in Senegal and 5 months in Ghana between June 2016 and December 2017. I've interviewed development organizations, financial and commercial institutions, state actors, all involved in some way or another in this global remittance agenda. And I've also interviewed over 70 remittance recipients with 1 and sometimes 2 revisits. Interviews with institutional actors took place in Accra and Dakar, the 2 capitals, and the interviews with remittance recipients were carried out in urban, peri-urban, and rural settings around Thiès in Senegal and Tamale in northern Ghana. So in total, I've done over 180 interviews in French, English, but also Wolof, Twi, and Dagbani, with the crucial help of 4 different research assistants. So the remittance landscapes quickly in Senegal and Ghana. So in Senegal, cross-border remittance inflows amounted to $2.5 billion in 2019. As for domestic remittances, it's a bit more difficult to get reliable data, but with domestic migrants representing roughly 15% of the population, I think it's safe to say that domestic remittances constitute a significant source of income for many households in the country. Now, over the past 10 years, the domestic and to a lesser extent international remittance landscape in Senegal has experienced dramatic changes. So just to give you one statistic, in 2009, more than 90% of domestic remittances were sent through so-called informal channels. So that's through a friend, a bus driver, or when migrants come back home to visit. In 2017, it was only 10%. So instead, people are now using financial accounts, mobile phones, over-the-counter services, etc. So what's happening is that money transfer operators, mobile network operators, as well as for-profit microfinance institutions and banks are now all competitors in this remittance industry. As for Ghana, remittance inflows amounted to $3.5 billion in 2019, representing 7.4% of the GDP. In Ghana too, the remittance landscape has experienced dramatic changes. So until 2011, it was estimated that 94% of domestic remittances were either sent through a friend or relative or brought back by migrants themselves on visits home. In 2017, 59% of recipients received their money using either a financial institution or a mobile money account. So in Ghana, like in many other countries, mobile money is increasingly seen as a tool that has the potential to alleviate poverty. And again, by incorporating the poor into formal finance, sometimes formal digital finance. And what's important to emphasize is that in both countries, remittances are considered a crucial entry point within this financial inclusion agenda. They're deemed an essential component of a wider portfolio of financial services. And this takes me to my first argument. So how do remittance markets come into being concretely in Senegal and Ghana? So one potential problem in the critical remittance literature I just mentioned is that the term financialization has come to represent a multitude of phenomena. As I said, it can refer to securitization, democratization of finance, financial inclusion, broader processes of financial accumulation, as well as invitation to live by finance, so everyday financialization. So linking remittances to wider processes of financialization may run the risk of actually overestimating the power of financial inclusion, I argue. And also risks underestimating the chaotic and fragile accomplishment of a market-led development project such as the Remittance Financial Inclusion Nexus. So in fact, what my empirical analysis suggests is that intra-household transfers do not have an inherent financial worth that can be easily unlocked and transformed into new development finance. Building markets that enable remittance money transfer to be tapped into by private sector actors, by state actors, actually requires extensive financial, material, technological, legal, discursive constructions, and importantly, behavioral engineering. Ultimately, what I argue is that the creation of remittances, of remittance markets, or the marketization of remittances, constitutes a crucial and necessary entry point for the financialization of remittances, which I define as the conversion of remittance-linked income streams into sources of financial profits and the transformation of remittance customers into investable assets. So here to help me with my arguments, I find it useful to draw upon an emerging literature that has recently taken up the task to bring science and technology studies and political economy approaches to markets and global finance into a productive dialogue. So in doing so, the aim is not only to understand how the financial incorporation of remittances and households is rendered possible practically, but also to understand how remittances and remittance markets sustain processes of finance-led capital accumulation. So what I do is I extend the geographies of marketization approach developed by Christian Bend and Mark Berkler to the concerted efforts to make remittances work for development in general and to make remittances work for financial inclusion in particular. So from this perspective, markets are understood as an arrangement of material and technological elements in combination with human activity. They are a social-technical agencement. And three decisive framings are usually considered to realize markets, and I will go through these three framings in the context of remittance markets in Senegal and Ghana. First, the conversion of things into commodities. Second, the work of valuing goods. Third, the work of organizing market encounters. Okay, so first framing. So in Senegal, since the early 2000s, the Senegalese state has been engaging with migrants abroad through a number of diaspora policies and discourses that link migration and development. Migrants have been portrayed as key agents of development who are expected to share the interest of their communities of origin and to bear a moral responsibility towards them. Over the years, these political and discursive processes legitimize and reinforce claims of the Senegalese state on remittances as national resources. At the same time, another important discursive construction has to do with the assumption that remittances are foreign in origin and therefore arrived as gifts that did not require prior negotiation, sacrifice, indebtedness. So remittances are deemed cost-free incomes in home countries, disentangled from any cumbersome realities. So representative of the Bank of Ghana I interviewed think of remittances, and I quote, as a free foreign exchange earner. So through this combination of political, discursive, and accounting processes, remittances are pacified. And what I mean by pacified is that to render legitimate development strategies that aim to construct, to maintain, and to deepen financial markets on the back of remittances, remittances must be detached from the realities of the production. They must be detached from a hierarchical global labor market, detached from coercive immigration regimes that create and perpetuate sacrifice and separation, racism, exploitative working conditions, poor housing, imprisonment, deportation, and even loss of life. So remittances are embedded within a particular regime of value, within which they are cost-free, aggregate, commensurate, and stable funds that can be capitalized on. Second framing. So the second framing relates to the valuing of remittances, which in this case entails the formatting of specific market agencies among remittance recipients, migrants, but also the agents that mediate these flows. So money transfer agents, mobile money agents, microfinance agents. And in other words, turning remittances into financial resources that can be leveraged for further financial inclusion depends primarily on the capacity to get migrants and to get remittance recipients to channel, use, and leverage remittances through these global financial circuits, through the formal financial sector. And what I am interested in is how is this being done concretely? And basically, and again, following this geography of marketization framework, these agencies are formatted by an arrangement of human beings on the one hand, and material, legal, technical, discursive, and textual market devices on the other. Put more simply, everything is done so that agencies are made aligned to idealized notions of market rationality and entrepreneurialism. Okay, so to give a bit more texture to what I'm saying, I'm going to unpack just a few of these elements that participate to the formatting of agencies. So what you see here is a picture of a small shop in the center of Thiès in Senegal. It's a shop that sells tableware and rugs, but it's also one of the many points of service where people can receive and send domestic and sometimes international remittances. So these points sprung up by the thousands all across the country over the past 10 years. Wari, so that's the green sign on the picture, is a locally owned money transfer organization, and they have now more than 20,000 points in Senegal. You can also see a pink board, Baobab. What this means is that this small boutique is also one of the 550 banking correspondents of Baobab Senegal, a recent for-profit microfinance institution in Senegal. So what happened is that in 2014, the microfinance institution rolled out an agent banking network that allows its customers to conduct various types of transactions at a banking correspondence location. That includes deposits, withdrawals, loan repayments, as well as money transfers from one account to another. And this is what this network of banking correspondents looks like now in Thiès. So just to give you some context, in Thiès, most banks and microfinance institutions only have one main agency and maybe 2-3 branches maximum. So what's crucial to understand is that most banking correspondents also are domestic an international money transfer point of service. They've been serving remittance customers and recipients for years, and it's not coincidental, I argue. In fact, banking correspondents have been carefully selected by Baobab. All these shops are street-front boutiques that have the required physical and technological infrastructure, the right skills, as well as enough cash flow to operate with. And most importantly, they are embedded in the community they live in. So here I argue that the embeddedness and the proximity act as a nudge, as a commitment device that encourages remittance recipients as well as banking correspondents to behave in certain ways rather than others. And this proximity is not only physical and social, but it's also technological and digital. It's supported again by a wide range of human and non-human elements that contribute to the formatting of agencies. And I'm going to mention a few here. So the approach of Baobab to roll out its network of banking correspondents and then to design and improve financial products is very much based on an iterative process that requires a lot of randomized controlled trials. In the case of Baobab, randomized controlled trials were often funded by organizations such as the MasterCard Foundation, the IFC, etc. And basically, RCTs, randomized controlled trials, they are behavioral experiments. So according to geographer Christian Berndt, they are used as socially and spatially enclosed stages on which nudges can be applied in controlled environments and on which learning can be monitored more efficiently. So in addition to this, Baobab was also able to tap into the pool of experienced money transfer agents to deploy its new approach, as I said. And these banking correspondents, they are trained and they're supported by correspondence managers, as they call it. And these managers, they are on-field employees of Baobab that regularly visit banking correspondents. They assess their cash flow availability, they assess their marketing approach, they provide them with technical assistance, etc. And they play a crucial role in the formatting of banking correspondence behaviors through their constant visits and their presence, as well as their marketing approach and training. So what's particularly interesting is that banking correspondents are encouraged by the managers to push their longtime customers, remittance customers, to open bank accounts and then use Baobab financial products such as microfinance loans. So every now and then, Baobab organizes a competition for all banking correspondents across the country. And a financial prize is rewarded to whoever sent the highest number of prospects to Baobab's agencies. So Khadim, a banking correspondent I met multiple times in Central Chest, told me that he actually managed to convince a lot of his long-time remittance clients, as well as his friends, family members, to open Baobab bank accounts. He says, I was calling lots of people to convince them. I managed to get lots of them to open accounts by telling them that they could get a loan. When I send someone to the agency, there's a good chance that they will get a loan. They know me well now at Baobab. So this agent network approach has already allowed Baobab to attract lots of new customers, among which a large number of remittance recipients. So in Ghana, similar logics are at play. I don't have time to go through this in much detail, but basically what I've just talked about in Senegal is just one model of branchless banking, one led by financial institutions. But what predominates in Ghana is a model that is led by non-bank financial actors, more particularly mobile network operators, what's often called mobile money. So through the creation of new digital financial products linked to remittances, so you can see these insurance products targeting migrants and recipients, but also through new technology of credit scoring algorithms, through the work of mobile money agents, text messages, and so on. Remittance recipients are also pushed to transform their remittance practices and behave in quote-unquote more responsible ways. Okay, third framing. So I have shown so far that lots of efforts and investments are made to try to incorporate remittances and remittance recipients into global financial circuits. And this is done through material, technological, behavioral engineering. And what's at stake here is very much the construction of stable and continuous remittance-linked income streams, fees, insurance premiums, loan repayments. Now, extensive financial engineering has also been undertaken by major financial and commercial actors in order to organize market encounters between their clients, so remittance customers, and national and global investors. So recent techniques of financial valuation and intermediation have started to facilitate the conversion of these income streams into sources of financial profits and to transfer remittance customers into investable assets for private investors. So for instance, in March 2016, Baobab was given a rating of BBB by the West African Rating Agency. And a few months later, they were able to carry out a successful local currency bond issue of 5 million euros on the regional stock exchange. That was in order to tap into local institutional investors. And it was the first ever microfinance institutions to do this in West Africa. In parallel to this, through techniques of financial intermediation, as Rob Aitken would call it, and notably via the role of microfinance investment vehicles, Baobab Group was able to allow foreign capital to reach its different microfinance institutions in the form of loans and equity. In a similar vein, in Ghana, MTN, so the largest mobile network operator, completed an initial public offer in 2018, becoming the first telecom provider in Ghana to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And what these IPOs showed is that Baobab, MTN, and other organizations are seen as increasingly viable entities for investment. So these three framings, these three stages or processes of remittance marketization, as I argue, represent a crucial and necessary entry point for the financialization of remittances. But what I'm going to argue now is that these processes do not come without contestation. And this is the second argument I'd like to focus on. So what I argue in my thesis is that any attempts to marketize and channel remittances away from so-called informal financial circuits face different forms of contestation, namely what I call reluctance, refusal, and dissent. And to explain how and why variegated financial practices and subjectivities that differ from this, neoliberal self-discipline subject. So why variegated financial practices and subjectivities emerge and endure, I draw together analysis on everyday financialization with discussions on the central role of informal finance and the central role of the concept of relational value in processes of social reproduction. Okay, so first advance the theorization of remittance recipients as reluctant subjects of marketization. And I do that in order to characterize participants who conceded to the disciplinary mechanisms of formal debt products, despite being aware of their potential and actual detrimental effects. So Issa, a shopkeeper in Tiénaba, that's near Thiès, who receives remittances from his three brothers in Gabon, told me that despite his initial reluctance, he found it hard to reject Baobab's loan renewal offer. He says, when I finished paying back my loan, I didn't want to take another one. It's the guy from Baobab who encouraged me to do it. He even called me to tell me. I told him to give me some time to think about it and that I would call him back. Sometime later, I called him back to let him know I would come in a few days for my second loan. So what happens is that Issa actually owed a large sum of money to one of his regular clients and basically used his second loan with Baobab to pay them back. So because of their difficult financial situations, the vast majority of recipients I spoke to who had loans with microfinance institutions said that they felt they had no choice but to accept the conditions underpinning these loans, as well as the consequences these may have on their everyday lives. So for some, entanglement in new market and financial arrangements forced partial disentanglement from so-called informal networks of debts, gifts, and exchange. And these include things, for instance, like rotating savings and credit associations. So in Senegal, for instance, Many remittance recipients I spoke to, especially women, but not only, saved a fraction of the remittances they received in ROSCAs, in these savings and credit associations. And what happens is that they then usually draw on funds they accumulate from these associations to be able to exchange gifts during life cycle ceremonies, such as naming ceremonies. Now, these decisions to save and invest outside formal financial circuits have usually been portrayed in development policy discourses as behavioral anomalies that supposedly reflect poor people's loss aversion, impatience, and their traditional, I quote, and backward lifestyles. In contrast to these views, and drawing upon work rooted in economic anthropology, I argue that these practices and expenditures, they constitute a way of not only making ends meet, but also creating enduring forms of value in the context of economic instability through the creation, the multiplication of and cementing of social ties. So in other words, participating in these associations and ceremonies contributes to the creation of relational value, following Julia Eliasha's work. That's the value attached to the creation, the reproduction, or an extension of relationships, which constitute a mode of survival and render possible the negotiation of daily life. And so when financial inclusion initiatives propose to and risk disentangling people and their remittances from these circuits of exchange, they're met with not only reluctance, but also rejection and dissent. So many remittance recipients I spoke to were not interested or even refused to be entangled in formal financial circuits. Acts of refusals were expressed not only on an individual basis, but also collectively. So Aisha, a farmer in Mbenayili, a village near Tamale, who received remittances from her daughters based in Accra, says, officers from various banks came to this village 3 times and never succeeded in convincing us because we already told them that they have very high interest rates. So we don't take loans or save with those financial formal institutions. The teachers in this village have advised us not to go for loans from the banks. Even before any organizations can operate in this community, they first have to go to the palace and seek for permission. And every time such financial institution comes, the chief doesn't allow them to operate. So we don't even have them here in this village. So in contrast to a literature on financial inclusion that tends to mostly focus on the predicament of people that have taken out loans and other financial products, my research also pays attention to the factors that push people not to participate or quit microfinance. So participants often raise concerns about high interest rates, the difficulty of repaying loans, but some provided more extensive critiques. So among the most critical of microfinance loans was Kwame, a former bank employee, now NGO worker who received remittances from his mother in Germany. And he says, people even die because of these things, because of these loans. The thing is that anybody who borrows is a slave to the lender because you have to be working to pay off. So for me personally, loans, I would prefer we do informally. You take the money, there is no interest. So when I get the money, I can pay you. So far from merely being a question of affordable loans or accessible loans, Kwame was more concerned about the disciplining social power of money and credits over social life. So microfinance debt was not seen as a neutral exchange of money between equals, but rather as constitutive of the inherently unequal relationship between debtors and creditors that underpins this microfinance as a poverty industry, as Susan Soderberg would call it. Finally, resistance to the remittance financial inclusion nexus and to financial inclusion more generally does not only consist in not participating, but also can take the form of collective self-organization among remittance recipients. So financial inclusion is not just covertly subverted, but it's also resisted, both individually and collectively. So just to give you an example, Rudia, who's a retired teacher in TS receiving remittances from her 3 daughters in France, she decided to set up a ROSCA, so one of these credit and saving associations at her school. And this was directly linked to her unwillingness to have anything to do with banks and microfinance institutions. She says, I don't want to take out loans because of the interest. This is why we set up a tontine, so that's the French name for the ROSCA in my school. I wanted to borrow money without having to pay any interest. I organized it so that they, her colleagues, could have access to money in a different way to show how we can solve our problems without the banks that suffocate us. So from this perspective, members of remittance households are dissenting subjects of marketization. They constitute and they maintain financial spaces in direct opposition to so-called inclusive financial systems. Okay, so to wrap up, I just want to finish with some of the contributions I think my research makes. So very quickly. So in this research, I try to sympathetically challenge extant research, which has tended to treat financialization as the explanation rather than what is to be explained. And again, I'm not the only one. You know, Stefan Uma has been doing this and others. Unpacking the macro practices of finance constitutes as much a technical endeavor as it does a political imperative that challenges taken for granted financial relationships, practices, and ideas. So Geographies of Remittance Marketization framework, which combine IPE and STS perspectives on global finance and markets, I think such analytical framework can enrich critics of the financialization of development in general, but also financialization of remittances, because it emphasizes the work that is done and therefore can be undone to construct remittances as financial assets upon which markets can be expanded. And finally, I also try to empirically research the ways in which this proliferation of financial reasoning, products, and services transform people's practices, routines, and norms. And the main aim of this part of the research was to empirically examine rather than infer, as it is often the case in the literature on everyday financialization. So to empirically examine whether and how new financial products transform existing socio-economic and cultural arrangements. So in doing so, I hope I managed to shed light on not only the fundamental limits to such marketizing projects, but also the different forms of resistance to processes of financial subject formation. All right, I think I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vincent. A small round of applause on mute. Thank you very much for a very rich presentation. It's already provoking a number of
Am I the only one who lost David? Or okay.
Okay, I think I froze there for a second.
Yeah, you're back.
Unfrozen now.
Okay, well, okay. The first question is from Michael Grote. Please, Michael, go ahead.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. So what I was interested in is you said that there needs to be quite a negativity overcome in order to make this more marketable instrument, saying that remittances are associated with a lot of negative things, slavery, etc. So I wonder why this is the case. I mean, remittances intra-household should have occurred for a long time. So, and are they? I wonder where the negativity comes from.
Should I? How do you want me to do it, David?
Yes, I think one at a time, please. So, if you want to respond, so it's. Did you get the question? Because there the quality wasn't too good of the audio.
I think so. I've also read Michael's comments on the chats.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So yeah, intra-household remittances occurred all the time. They've been occurring for a very long time, and they will continue to occur. I think what I was trying to get at is that when you try to rely on a development strategy that depends on remittances, you also need to account for the production, the realities in which remittances are produced, you know, and you can't really talk about this without thinking about coercive immigration regimes, of hierarchical, racialized global labor markets, whether, you know, it's from regional or international migration. So what I was trying to get at is, rather than just this, you know, simple sum of money, as it's often depicted in the institutional literature and the economics-oriented literature, you know, remittances also depict, you know, some social relations of sacrifice, of indebtedness, you know, to migrate, because there's no, because the paths to migrate tend to be securitized, etc. So that's what I was trying to get at when I was thinking of this word of pacifying, because rather than thinking of all of these realities of production, remittances tend to just be depicted as this just sum of money, which are completely disentangled from the realities of migrants and recipients. I hope it's clearer.
Okay, thank you. Then there's a question from Karen. Well, maybe I can just read it because it's a short one. So, what's the difference between these nano loans and micro loans?
Yeah, well, so we all know micro loans. You know, they tend to be small, but nano loans tend to be even smaller. And whereas micro loans, you know, they need to be repaid over a period of a few months. You know, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Nano loans in a country such as Ghana, but also Kenya, it's 30 days, and it can be, you know, it can be a loan of the equivalent of maybe £7, £10, £15. So when the, you know, there's been like, people have been trying to draw parallel between payday loans and microfinance loans, but I think when it comes to these nano loans, so, you know, just loans that people take to really, you know, make ends meet and buy food because they don't have any. I think the parallel here is even stronger. And again, the interest rates are even higher when it comes to those digital nano loans, because so I made some calculations in Ghana with the product called Quick Loan, the APR, so the annual percentage rate can easily be over 100%, because if you pay in your loan in 30 days, I think it's roughly 60–75% interest rate. But if you don't pay on time, you get extra fees, etc. And then it can easily become a loan that has to be repaid with more than 150% interest rates at times. And that's the same in lots of countries, especially in Eastern Africa at the moment.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I think then Derek has 2 questions about, you could say, similarities, differences between Ghana and Senegal. Derek?
Thank you, David, and thank you, Vincent. Congratulations on your research. So my questions are simple. I was wondering about the countries that the remittances in Senegal and Ghana come from, and in general, I also wanted to ask about any major differences between the markets and the cultures of remittances between Senegal and Ghana. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, here I think it's important to understand the differences between cross-border remittances, regional and domestic remittances. So when we talk about international, or the OECD, they call it international remittances, so transnational but not regional. So when it comes to Senegal, you know, historically it's been France, but more recently countries such as Spain, Italy, the US have recently come to the fore. And Ghana, it's Britain, the US, and other countries. But most importantly, what's often undermined or ignored is those regional remittances. So country migrants migrating to the neighboring country. So the Nigeria-Ghana migration corridor, remittance corridor, is absolutely massive, and not much research is being done about those regional migration corridors. And I think it's quite interesting to delve into that a little bit deeper, especially because this is where usually the innovations happen. So mobile money remittances usually start domestically and then regionally, and it's only it's only at a later stage that mobile transfer happen internationally because of lots of different reasons, regulations and technological operability, etc. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the other question.
The second one was, you focus a lot on similarities. You tell a story about similarities, basically, but there may also be differences in remittance culture and their incorporation in financial circuits.
Yeah, that's true. I mostly focus on similarities, the ways in which remittances are used, the ways in which they're used in those so-called informal circuits of exchange and gifts, etc. There are obviously the differences. So I think one interesting thing in Senegal is and I didn't touch upon that in my dissertation, is Islamic finance. Which doesn't allow interest rates on loans, but amongst the participants I spoke to, that was not really a big concern, and I was surprised, but that was not something that came up in my research. So you're right, I mostly focused on similarities, not so much on differences, and happy to hear anyone who would like to talk to me about that.
Okay. Then Sibel, I'm not sure if you're asking a question, but there's a comment about the role of interpersonal relationships, and I think that also triggered some further conversation as to what extent there's differences in terms of how you can avoid the person in the shop versus the way you're disciplined through digital applications. So that was a bit of a comment, I think, in the chat or a conversation. If you want to reflect on that, you can do that.
No, that's true. I mean, so at the moment I'm working on India and Cambodia as part of a larger project, and what we realized, and that during the COVID crisis, after the crisis, when microfinance officers returned back to villages to claim the loans, people were actually hiding, literally hiding, in houses and not responding to people knocking on doors because they just couldn't repay their loans. And because those microfinance officers are not embedded in the community they live in, they usually live in the city nearby. And that's obviously not the case for banking correspondents, or when people take out digital loans. So I think that's an important development, where deduction can happen automatically. So say you have a mobile wallet and you owe money to a microfinance institution. If in Ghana, for instance, someone sends you money to pay, hospital fees. It happened to one of my participants. What happened is that as soon as you receive the money, it's deducted automatically from your mobile wallet, and it's going directly to pay back the loan. So these things are being, branded automatic. So you can talk about automated deduction and things like that. And that's absolutely true, and I think quite a scary development as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Then Linda, you have a question?
Yes. I do have a question. So there was an estimate by Mazzucato et al. So in their research, they estimated that even though the Bank of Ghana had their remittance inflow as $1 billion US, their research concluded that the remittances from Netherlands to Ghana, 2/3 of it passes through the hands of travelers, which means 2/3 of remittances come through unofficial means. So they roughly estimated the Bank of Ghana money to roughly $3 billion US. So in your research, the figures that you presented, does that figure include the unofficial remittances that also comes into these countries, or these are just official figures?
Yeah, so yeah, the figures I draw upon are the ones from the World Bank, and the methodology used by the World Bank is different from the methodology used by the central banks. And when I was interviewing someone from the Central Bank of Ghana, and I was asking about the different methodologies, he was actually telling me that they don't know how the World Bank does it, and they don't share how they do it. So I could be wrong, and it's always been this, this long debate between formal and informal. But I think the World Bank tries to account for so-called informal, and so it's basically an estimation that accounts for both formal and informal ways of transfer. That would be my. But again, I've spent the last 7 years to really understand how they do it. But yeah, I'm still struggling.
Okay, thank you. Then there's a question and comment from Christopher Harker. Christopher, please.
Hi, Vincent. Thank you ever so much for the wonderful presentation, as always. So what I was noting in the comment question was how, in your context, financial inclusion sort of equals microfinance as you presented it, which obviously links with kind of Philip Madder's argument. But elsewhere, financial inclusion includes things like literacy. And one of the things that I was struck with in terms of your quotes was how people seem very knowledgeable about interest rates and being able to decide like what's a high interest rate and kind of exploitative. So is there any, is there a broader context here of either state-led or privately led financial literacy programs, or if you like, where does this knowledge of things like interest rates come from?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think so I didn't touch upon that too much in my presentation, but one of the things I try to show in my thesis is that this remittance financial inclusion nexus, it aims to advance the rise of behaviorism and experimentalism in the name of development. And what happens is that poverty is conceived as, as a cognitive problem, and solutions are to be found in the transformation of these anomalous and problematic behaviors. So that's 2015 World Bank development report about this cognitive bias of the poor. And I think that this nexus remittance and financial inclusion is really, it's kind of drawing upon these kind of things. Financial literacy, yeah, I think it does happen, not so much by the state from what I could see, but for instance, this quick loan I was talking about in Ghana, which is provided by MTN, so the largest mobile network operator, in partnership with some fintechs and some financial institutions. I was talking to the country's director of GCRF, so the fintech, and what they do is that they send text messages to all MTN subscribers. So that's roughly 25% of the population. And obviously, I don't want to over-exaggerate the impacts of these text messages, but the country director was very clear that these text messages, they're not only just promoting financial products and services, they are also used as tool of financial advice. So what to do when you have money on your mobile money wallet. And one of the things I was told is that to improve your credit score, if you receive remittances, it's better to keep it in the money wallet rather than cashing out directly, because otherwise that means you need the money directly, so you're probably not very solvent, so we're not gonna get you a loan. So that was one of the 7,000 plus metrics that this quick loan uses and enter in their algorithms. So yeah, it does happen, but again, it's based on this idea of, you know, defective behaviors, problematic behaviors that need to be fixed by this financial literacy programs and advice, you know. So it's very much, you know, part of this individualization of poverty, completely obscuring any obscuring power, I'd say. Yeah.
So there's a way in which even those in the village that don't take loans are nevertheless incorporated within the financial inclusion assemblage through these text messages.
If there are MTN subscribers, they would receive these text messages. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Then there's also a question from Chris Mullerlily. Chris?
Hi, Vincent. Thanks very much. I was just wondering, you know, part of the discourse in the UK and the US from payday lenders and other institutions like that is if they are, I mean, yes, we charge high interest rates, but if you bring down the heavy-handed, you know, regulation, you'll drive our customers into more informal financial relations that, you know, will be more dangerous and, you know, more exploitative than us. So I was just wondering is that part of the discourse in Senegal, and regardless of that, are there, you know, did you come across exploitation and or violence in the kind of informal financial relationships? Thanks very much.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Again, I didn't have much time to talk about that, but what I'm also trying to be very careful about is not to romanticize those informal arrangements, financial circuits, etc., because they are imbued with, you know, uneven and sometimes problematic power relations, you know, along class, gender, etc. But and that happens, you know, within those roscas, but also these naming ceremonies, you know, where people get over indebted because they have to pay back the gifts that they were gifted before. But this I think this figure of these usurious money lenders, obviously they do exist, but in countries such as Senegal, it's, I don't know. I didn't find this you know, this figure of the usurious money lender, and talking with other scholars working on Senegal, you know, that we had the same opinion about that. So I'm not saying this doesn't happen, and I'm not saying that it, and I'm pretty sure the variations across countries are big, but the fact that it's always this figure of the usurious money lenders that, you know, that needs to be stopped, and that we need to be replaced by, you know, rational, more safe and accessible money financial products and services, I think is part of a myth that is maintained by you know, development financial organizations that have interest in trying to promote new financial products and services. But again, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I think, we need to be careful about how this trope is also being used.
Thank you very much for your answers, Vincent. I think we're almost hitting 3 p.m. now. So I would like to conclude the Q&A session. I think we could keep on talking now if we want more informally in the space that will be provided. There's a WonderMe space, and the link is actually in. It's Karen communicated again. It's there. Okay. Then a number of other housekeeping messages. The next seminar will be taking place on the 30th of March, and that will conclude the first series of virtual seminars. We'll be continuing, and on the 30th of March we have Raquel Rolnick of the University of Sao Paulo, and she'll be talking about post-2008 financialized housing geographies from above and from below. And then a second announcement is that tomorrow is the deadline. It's the final day for applying to send in abstracts for the RSA eFestival, and FinGeo is also organizing an open session, so you can submit a paper still or an abstract, and all information is actually available on the FinGeo website. So those are the two remaining messages that I had. If you want, you can now switch to the WonderMe space, and we'll keep this space open until you have switched, if you want to do so. And then the only thing I can still do is to thank Vincent again for his presentation, and also thank RSA for the support, Darius, Karen, and Duncan for co-organizing this series. And then I hope I can see you again on the 30th of March. Thanks a lot, and see you on the next time.